Welcome to Thoughts and Theories. Have you ever stopped and wondered why you made the choices you made today? Why did you eat what you ate, wear what you're wearing, or even click on this video? At first glance, it feels obvious. You did those things because you decided to. Because you have free will, right? But what if that feeling and that sense of control is just an illusion? Free will is one of those ideas that almost everyone believes in, at least on the surface. It gives us comfort. It gives us a sense of responsibility and purpose. We like to think we're the authors of our own lives, steering our own stories. But when you look closer, when you really dig into the nature of choice, cause, and the human mind, things start to get blurry. The more you examine it, the more free will starts to dissolve like mist under sunlight. Let's start simple. Imagine you walk into a restaurant. The waiter hands you a menu. You look at the options: pizza, burger, salad. And after thinking for a few seconds, you choose the burger. You feel like you made a free choice. But if we rewind the tape and look closer, what really led you to that decision? Maybe you were craving something greasy because you skipped breakfast. Maybe you saw an ad for burgers earlier. Maybe your mood, your hormones, or your blood sugar level nudged you in that direction. Every one of those factors, hunger, advertising, emotion, memory, came from somewhere you didn't choose. So the question is, did you really choose the burger freely? Or did a complex web of prior causes lead you there, while your mind simply took the credit? Think of it like a domino chain. Every decision we make is a domino falling, and every domino was pushed by countless others before it. Your genetics shaped your brain. Your childhood shaped your habits. Your culture shaped your values. Your past experiences shaped your fears and desires. By the time you make a choice, the stage is already set. You're just the next domino falling exactly the way the chain dictates. Some people say, sure, maybe I'm influenced by things, but I can still choose differently if I want. But even that want, where does it come from? Why do you want one thing and not another? You didn't choose your wants. You didn't choose your personality, or your emotional reactions, or your thought patterns. You didn't choose to like certain foods, or certain people, or certain ideas. All of those are built on a foundation of things that happened long before you were aware of yourself. This brings us to the big debate: determinism versus free will. Determinism is the idea that everything that happens is the result of prior causes. In other words, if we knew every atom's position in every law of physics, we could predict exactly what would happen next, including what you would think or do. It's like the universe is one big machine, and every part is moving according to fixed rules. If that's true, then there's no room for real choice. You couldn't have done otherwise because the universe itself couldn't have gone otherwise. Now, this sounds mechanical, even depressing to some, but it's worth thinking about how deep this goes. Neuroscientists have done experiments showing that our brains make decisions before we consciously know we've made them. In one famous study by Benjamin Libet, researchers monitored people's brain activity while they were asked to press a button whenever they felt like it. What they found was that the brain had already started preparing to move the finger almost half a second before the person felt like they had decided to move it. In other words, your brain makes the choice, and then your conscious mind takes the credit afterward. You're more of a narrator explaining your behavior than a true controller of it. Other experiments have gone even further. With brain scans, scientists can sometimes predict your choice before you know it yourself. Up to 7 seconds before you decide, your brain already shows which option you'll pick. Think about that. The decision isn't really being made by the part of you that feels like you. It's happening behind the curtain, in your subconscious. And then your conscious mind steps in and says, I decided that. It's like your brain is the stage director, and your conscious self is just the actor reading the lines. But maybe that's too scientific, too abstract. Let's look at real life. Imagine two people born on the same day in the same country. One grows up in a peaceful, educated family, the other in a violent, poor neighborhood. One grows up learning kindness and empathy. The other learns fear and aggression as survival tools. Years later, one becomes a doctor, the other a criminal. Are we really comfortable saying they both had the same free will? The circumstances that shaped them weren't chosen by them. They didn't choose their parents, their genes, their neighborhoods, or the traumas that rewired their brains. So when one person makes a good choice and another makes a bad one, how much of that is truly theirs? This idea has massive consequences for how we see justice, morality, and even self-worth. If nobody truly chooses who they are, what they believe, or how they act, then praise and blame start to look different. We can still hold people accountable, of course. Society needs rules to function, but maybe we'd focus more on understanding and rehabilitation rather than punishment and hatred. After all, if a person's actions are the product of causes beyond their control, then punishing them as if they freely chose evil starts to look like punishing a storm for raining. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The same logic applies to you and me, the kind person and the cruel person, the successful and the struggling. All are shaped by luck, genes, and history. The self we identify with might just be the sum of everything that happened to us. You didn't build yourself from scratch. You were built by a universe that didn't ask for your permission. Now, you might be thinking, okay, maybe everything has a cause, but isn't it still me making those choices, even if I'm influenced by outside factors? That's a fair question, but to say me means you have to define what you are. Are you your thoughts? Your emotions? Your brain chemistry? All of those things are products of biology and experience, and none of those were up to you. So when you say, I chose, it's really just the physical brain doing what it's wired to do, following patterns you never consciously designed. Let's test this idea with a smaller example. Think about anger. When you get angry, you don't choose to feel that emotion. It happens automatically, triggered by chemicals and neural circuits. You can't wake up and decide, today I'll feel angry at random things, unless your brain is in that state to begin with. The same goes for love, fear, motivation, or laziness. These things happen to us, not by us. So if our emotions, our desires, and even our reasoning all arise from forces we don't control, then how much free is there in our free will? And if you think, but I can still control myself, that's just the same process happening on another level. The self-control you think you have is just one part of your brain trying to regulate another part. Even that balance between impulse and control depends on how your brain developed, what habits you learned, and what chemicals are flowing through your system at that moment. Again, none of it was freely chosen. This doesn't mean life is meaningless. In fact, understanding that our choices are shaped by countless factors can make us more compassionate. It can help us let go of unnecessary guilt or hatred, because we see that everyone, including ourselves, is the result of an endless chain of causes stretching back to the Big Bang. Every decision we make is just the universe expressing itself through us, through these bodies and minds that we temporarily call me. But there's still more to explore, because even if determinism is true, not everyone agrees that it kills free will completely. Some thinkers argue that free will and determinism can coexist, that even if everything has a cause, what matters is that our actions flow from our internal desires, not from outside compulsion. They call this compatibilism. Others think that's just changing the definition of free will to make us feel better. So in the next part, we'll explore those arguments, the philosophical counterpoints, the idea of randomness and quantum uncertainty, and whether we can still find meaning, morality, and responsibility in a world without absolute free will.